Good evening, and welcome back to another special series episode of Narc Narc. Who's there? Help! I'm gasping for air. Dana is again gracing me with her beautiful presence to co-host with me. And I just want to thank everyone because we are just, I don't even know the word, we are stunned by
Yeah.
how everybody has received the series. I mean, together we're looking at close to 6 million, and that's close, right? It's about right numbers.
Yeah, I think stunned is a good word, but I want people to understand it's sort of like when we have our books out there, it's bittersweet. I
Yeah.
mean, of course, we're doing this so that we can get the word out, but it's sad to me that this many people should not be relating to the things that we talk about. But for that reason, I'm glad we're doing it. So thank you for having me on with you. I'm always thrilled to
This is
talk.
our show. It's not you coming on as a guest. This is ours. So I heard you got a cool mug.
I did get a cool mug. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It is the series mug that you sent me. Narc Narc, who's there? Help, I'm gasping for air. Yes, I was very excited. I had my first cup of coffee the next morning in that mug, and it was so nice. But again, this is about everyone else and just relating and connecting and making sure people understand the circumstances they're in, because until you really get that you're in a bad situation, I mean, it feels bad and you know that it's not right, but until you realize that, no, this is really abuse and this can actually lead to severe physical consequences and ultimately, for some people, death. And I think that we forget too that, now that this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I think the thing for me, since we both released our books about, having narcissistic abusive parents, is that, we forget it's the whole experience when kids, even if they're not abused, even just witnessing the violence, witnessing the abuse, even if it's, I hate to say just verbal because that's very impactful in its own way, but it impacts everybody in the family. I mean, this is not just an isolated thing where dad beats up mom and that's it. It affects everybody. So we really do need to be aware of it and not just brush it under the rug.
Absolutely. I saw one of the most emotional videos, and I put a message out to see if I could use it for copyright reasons. I had to get permission, and I haven't heard back yet. So I won't give extreme details about it, but it was so well done. I really, to even kind of go over what it was a mom who had just given birth to a little girl, and the dad comes in and she's like, I want a divorce. And he was like, what? And he started crying. So she just wiped the tear off his face. And then she goes, I want a divorce. And he goes, but we can. And she's like, no, no. And she goes, let me ask you a question. If our daughter came to you and said, somebody I'm dating or I love or whatever knocked me down a flight of stairs, what would you say to them? If our daughter came to you and said, he hit me, but he says he loves me and he won't do it again, what would you say to him? And she's holding this newborn, beautiful little girl, and she is talking to him, and this goes on, and I don't want to
Mhm.
go and trigger. And so she goes on about it, and then he looks at her and he goes, I would tell her to get as far away from him as I can. And I was like, wow, that is so impactful. Like, just here's your newborn daughter. This is what you're doing. I'm out. I'm gone. And and it was so well done. And it is so authentic because people just don't get it. Like, people, they don't get it. They're so quick to judge. They're immediately like, well, and it really just, I'm trying to think of the word, Dana, to use. What really just makes me not happy is the fact that they judge us before they judge them. Like, well,
Oh,
what did you do to make them mad? Why didn't you just do what they wanted? Why did you upset them? What about us? What about how we feel and what we're doing? Because, and I've said this a million times, you could do everything spot on and somebody cuts them off on the way home. Somebody gets in an argument with them on their at work. Somebody decides, oh, their mistress isn't going to see them tonight for whatever reason it is. We're still at the battleground when they get back to the house. It doesn't
oh,
matter if we've done everything right, we're their battleground.
Yeah, and not just that, I hate to say it, but when you were telling that story about that video and, she's asking him, "Well, what would you say to that person?" Maybe it's my unfortunate life experience, but I was expecting you to say, because this is probably what I would have expected my stepfather to say to my mother if she had been referring to me. Well, she probably deserves it then. If somebody threw her down a flight of stairs, if somebody hit her, she probably deserved it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of those people out there.
Yes.
And those are usually the narcissists that are, these are the people that are committing these acts of domestic violence and feel justified and will actually blame the victims, just like I mean, there are so many people. But yeah, I've been on the receiving end of the same. When my first book came out, how could you do that to him? How could I do that to him? How could he do that to me? And I've been asked if I feel bad about my second book, that, oh, how could you do that to your parents? I would never. Well, I would never do to my child what they chose to do to me. Well, and then the common, oh, I, I've done so many interviews about the second book, and the common question is, well, were they abused when they were children? Were they mistreated? And that's the thing that infuriates me the most, because it's like it doesn't matter. Yeah,
Right.
actually, in my case, they both were, but that does not excuse it. I was, and I didn't do that to my son. I probably went so far on the other end that
Just like
it
me. Yeah.
almost did a disservice to my son, because I was like, nobody is going to love this child and support him and encourage and be all these things a mother is supposed to be, more than me. Not with my kid. It is a choice. So it pisses me off too. I'm just going to say it. This victim shaming, because it's just, I mean, it's not even that it's invalidating. You are just basically enabling these abusers. You are basically saying to the abusers and to society as a whole, it's okay to treat somebody that way if you get pissed off, if you're mad about what your mom did to you when you were a kid, if you're whatever. Like you say, the coming home, oh, that resonates with me. I mean, I think I put that in my book,
Mhm.
Gasping for Air, that, about the time he was going to come home every day, it was this, and I noticed my son do it too at a small age. We'd go around and make sure nothing was moved even an inch from where it should be, and everything was exactly how, we didn't want anything to provoke, an issue. Even for me, he would make comments like, oh, can't you like get yourself together before I come home? Why do you have to look like that? And so it was me primping myself. Do I look okay? Maybe I'll change. He doesn't like this shirt. He doesn't like when I wear this lipstick. He likes my hair, all this crap. And then we lived in the country, so it was like hearing his tires on that gravel driveway, the crunch, crunch, crunch. It's like a cat when their ears go up and they hear something that they should be cautious about. That's how it felt. And like you just saw me, I know nobody could see me, but my shoulders like
Mhm.
clenched up, my body stiffens, and my body is always stiff. 48 years old, and that's the one thing. My nervous system is still trying to settle, but I keep my tension, just my body holds it. So, oh, it's a lot. It's a
It
lot.
is.
But I think that that's why we're here, is to try to kind of take this all apart, dissect the experience for those who don't understand, and then for those that do, to maybe understand it better.
Well, I was thinking about that for, I think this is definitely going to be in our series. We try to cover like one topic per show, but this might be a two-show topic that we go through and really dissect what this does to the survivors. Because I cannot use the term victim, because we are not. We are survivors. We thrive. And so the way I thought about it is like, if you let's take a puzzle, let's take a 500-piece puzzle, and let's say that is the individual, and people see that puzzle and they see it completed. Well, let's take the first piece away, and the first piece away is something so simple. It's, when you hear something every day, it becomes part of your truth. When you hear, you know I love you, like, I love Dana like a sister, and she knows that, and I will call and check on her and text her, and just, for whatever reason. And it's because I truly care. So when you have the complete opposite, And it's one comment, that's one puzzle piece, because that comment's going to be repeated and it's going to be constant. Oh, you look like a $2 whore because you're wearing lipstick. Who are you wearing lipstick for? So a puzzle piece is gone. So a part of you is now taken away. So then you go into oh, you can't wear that. You don't look good in that. Oh, you can't wear your hair that way. You can't wear your makeup that way. I don't want you to wear this kind of clothes. I don't like this. I don't like this. And the more I heard that, the more I was like, you couldn't get any uglier. You could not get any more unattractive. You couldn't get any more unattractive. Like your outside is getting uglier by your inside, right? So like your puzzle pieces are slowly taking away. And I thought, what an analogy to use is we kind of show what it does to a person who goes through this, whether they get it because they've been here. And something else I'll divert before I let Dana go is to this is, when I went through this and I went to court for it, they tried to say, well, she's the victim, she's this, she's that, she's whatever. Well, let's look at it this way. If you go to school and then you go to med school and then you become a resident and then you start practicing. So let's just say, depending on what practice you go into and your specialty, it's, 8 to 12 plus years. And that's what, 60 hours, 80 hours, 120 hours a week to make you a quote unquote expert. Well, okay, so let's give them that. So we live this 24/7, not 40, not 60, not 80, not 120 hours a week. We live this constantly because even if somebody is not there at the moment, we are constantly thinking of how to prevent the future comings. We are trying to decide how can we do this or this or this to make it not happen when he arrives back. So we are on 24/7. We don't get a moment off. We're always in that tunnel alert. We're always on that high alert. Like as an officer, it's tunnel vision. Your adrenaline is running because you're trying to make sure that you stop the threat before it happens. So with all of that, you look at that and then you look at the years that we've been. How can someone say you're not an expert at this? Because you've lived it in and out. You could discuss it better than anyone who's read a book or read the course itinerary or took the course because you've lived it inside and out. And so just for that reason alone, I want everybody to understand in my eyes that Dana is a hands down expert in this. So that's my little 2-minute thing. I'm done. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I mean, here's the reality of it. There's a lot of people that are experts in a lot of things and have knowledge that they may not have a piece of paper or some certification or whatever for. It's not so much about that, but what I love about the two of us is, yes, you actually are in fact a doctor, really. But, what I bring to the table, which you also do, and which I think is what helps us to help others, is that we are both very well educated and we're able to verbalize things as accurately as we can, even the things that are just unspeakable. And there are times when even I have no words for something, but so given that, this is a good segue into what you just spoke about the experience. I mean, all this hypervigilance and this, trying to make the environment and the situation okay all the time. And like you said, it's 24/7. There is a term for that people commonly use. I mean, other than hypervigilance, but it's this idea of anxiety.
Mhm.
People don't really, I think it's one of those terms I hate to say that is loosely used. Like people say, oh, I have so much anxiety. And I'm not dismissing that. I think a lot of people do. But anxiety is stress and worry about the future, stress and worry about negative outcomes in the future. But for us, our future, when we're in these abusive circumstances, is literally second to second.
It
You
is.
are literally trying to think about, what am I doing right now? What kind of a vibe am I giving off? What can possibly, with regard to me, with regard to the circumstances, with regard to the environment, is there anything here that's going to provoke, you know, the unpleasance that comes as a result of it? But it's not just right now. Then I got to think about the next second and the next second, and then somebody walks in the room, or you know, thunder goes. It could be anything, like you said, because it could be, sometimes for me it was just a look or a
Mhm.
word I used or what I served for dinner, or God forbid if I opened, like I remember one time I'm in my kitchen now. I remember one time I closed the kitchen drawer, and I didn't have those real fancy ones that close all the way up by themselves. They were they were the cheap kind that it stopped like 2 inches short of being fully closed, and oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So, when you're going through this high level of anxiety, and like you said, the adrenaline's running through you, your cortisol, the stress hormone, is also pumping through you. Cortisol is actually what ended up making me physically ill, and I will be for the rest of my life. I'm much healthier now that I'm not in that circumstance, but this is a primary aspect of that abusive experience that people, I think they almost get, I know even for me, maybe it did for you, but you almost get used to living in that high level of tension and that high level of hostility that you don't even realize it, because you think, oh, others have anxiety. Yeah, like, oh, you're stressed out about a test at school, or you're stressed about something going on at work and you have anxiety, but you don't think you have anxiety. It's because you're living it every second. You're
Right.
breathing it even when you're sleeping. I mean, I slept so far on the other side of the bed because I didn't want I was so afraid of this man. I didn't want to do anything, touch him, be anywhere near him. I honestly thought he was going to suffocate me with a pillow one night. I wasn't sure. So it's like you can't even rest at night to get the sleep you need, which just makes you that much more, your mind is fuzzy because you're tired all the time. You're irritated, and you react to things maybe a little more than you would have, and then you're almost acting like them sometimes, but it's just because your body is exhausted, your mind is exhausted, your body is tightened, your muscles, everything just clenches because of that anxiety, and it's not the way we're supposed to live.
No,
We have
it's not.
to live in the present. I mean, I am 48 years old, and I've talked about this, I think, on another episode, but I am still, and I probably will be on and off the rest of my life, but as far as I've come along, I am still trying to undo all that crap,
Yeah.
because I am fighting to just live in the moment and live in the present and be able to accept and receive and open my heart to the joys and blessings of right now, without that worry of, well, what if, and should I, and but what if this and that person said that. I'm still working on taking that hypervigilance and that level of anxiety a notch down, because yes, they can put you on, meds for it. They can give you some, Xanax. I've been on that. They can, people have all the CBD stuff now, and I'm not dismissing it, because sometimes you need a little help. Some people drink, some people, whatever they do. I am working to not have to depend on something, to not be that way. But it's so sad to me that we live these terrible lives. And then even after we're safe and everything's good and there is just rainbows and sunshine and unicorns, you're still fighting this war inside yourself to be able to just be. And I don't know if that's worse than having lived back then or not, because it really, it can affect the relationships you have now, the healthy connections you're making now, the way you function daily now. So it's really frustrating, but I just want people to be aware that even though we're sitting here on this podcast talking, like, I mean, we do know a lot about all this stuff and we've been through it, but I don't want anyone to think that there's some level of perfection they have to achieve, or that they haven't progressed to where they should, because it's an ongoing thing and we all struggle with this forevermore.
Yeah. One step forward is still one step ahead, and you're
It
leaving
is.
one step behind. I did an interview earlier in the week, and I have to tell you, I won't say who she is because, I wish her the best. But we were doing an interview, and she says to me, well, give me an example of what would set him off. And I said, "Oh, okay," because we were doing it for domestic violence awareness, and she wanted me to come on, and I ended up writing her back and say, "I do not give permission for you to air." I walked off the recording. I ended
Oh,
it, which is so I've never done that before. She said, "Well, give me an example." I said, "Okay, here's a perfect example. He was going to make some sort of like rib thing, and he got one of those containers that you get to hold it, the big aluminum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you put that, and when you put the meat in there, I was like, this might seem a little flimsy. Do you think we should take a second one and put it underneath just to be safe? And he looked at me there like I lost my mind. Like, why would I tell him that what he had already done wasn't right? And so he said, I know what I'm doing, blankety blank, 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 blank. And he fills it with Coke. He puts Coca-Cola in there, whatever. And then
Yeah.
he puts it in this, and the whole thing's wobbling. And I'm like, I know where this is going. I don't say another word. And he puts it in there. Well, when it's time for it to come out, I go and I'm trying to pull this thing out, and I'm pregnant, but whatever. And I go to pull it out, and some of the Coke spills into the bottom of the oven. And he went nuts. It was my fault. It was my clumsiness. How could I have done that? How did I make a mess? Da, 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 da. You can't say anything. So after, he everything's done and the oven is cooling down, he throws paper towels at me and tells me to clean the stove. So the only thing I can do right now is I sit on the kitchen floor and I bring the door of the oven down so that I can get in there and
Yeah.
clean up this Coke. And when I do, he takes the door of the oven and starts to pull it towards shutting it and jams my face into the towel rod. And it was, "Well, you shouldn't have let this happen." And the lady goes, "Well, then why didn't you just pick it up and put another pan under it?" And I said, "Do you know that what you just said to me gave him permission to do what he just did to me? Like,
Yeah.
you just authenticated his behavior." And I said, "Do you understand that? Like, you just justified him breaking my nose for like the third time at this point because I didn't go back and overstep him and put another pan underneath, knowing that this would happen. And what would happen if I overstepped?" I said, "If I had done that, I would have gotten more than a broken nose." And you're authenticating his behavior is okay. Like, you're saying, why didn't you just do it? Why didn't you just go and do it and save it from breaking the pan and making Coke mess everywhere? Just put another aluminum foil tray underneath. And I said, "Do you know what would have happened? It would have been much worse than a broken nose." And I said, "You know what? I'm done. I thank you for the opportunity to come on, but I'm not giving you permission to release this because you don't understand. Like, you don't get it. You're judging me
Right.
because of what happened, and you don't have a clue. And good for you for not having a clue. Good for
Right.
you for being able to go to sleep with both eyes shut, not one eye open. So good for you. I'm out." And I walked off and I was done. And it was just, it's comments like that that are not okay. And that's another reason I'm so glad that we're doing this series is because some people don't get it. And it's really important that those who have not, good for you, been through this scenario, doesn't mean you won't down the road because neither one of us expected to be in it. But you need to learn how to talk to people. I mean, it's not okay. It's just not
Yeah.
right.
I agree. I mean, I used to be offended by people that didn't kind of tiptoe around, my emotions and have, more sensitivity or consideration to what I've been through. And I kind of got over that when I had a therapist years ago that's like, it's not all about you. And I was like, oh, but it is,
Right.
And I'm
Right.
like, oh, wait, but if I want to function in normal society, I can't expect everybody to understand. But I do draw the line with judgment. So I 100% agree with you there because I would never, this is just the first thing that came to mind. I know a few people, unfortunately, but one friend in particular who lost her daughter. Tragically, her daughter was only a teenager. I could never comprehend. I can imagine, I don't want to, but I will never understand what that feels like. And I pray to God I never will.
Right.
But I would never presume to tell somebody or even imply how they should feel, what they should have done. We are all unique and we are all different. We all come from different backgrounds. How I react to something as, well, in childhood, I was a victim. I don't like to use that word either, but when you're a kid, there's
Right.
no getting out of it. You're stuck. But, as a lifelong, I hate to use the word, person who has experienced abuse, we'll go with that. I am going to react to things a little differently than my husband, who came from the Beaver Cleaver family, or at least that's what they seem. it's just how life is. But judgment, I mean, yeah, I mean, I can get into a whole thing. We could have a whole podcast about judgment, but a lot of people really are judgmental, and they have no business speaking in this realm when you know somebody has, been through, especially in your circumstances, the severity, the extent of what you endured. I don't care who you are and where you're from. I stand by, if somebody intentionally harms you, they're an a-hole. There is no reason for that. Even after all the things that somebody can do and be this vile, awful human being, I mean, I don't know. It really pains me to know that you had that experience. I've only, out of many, many interviews, I've only ended one shortly, and I didn't do it as politely as you did. I just logged off because I was honestly dysregulating, and I was like, I'm done. Goodbye.
You didn't even say goodbye, you just
I
checked
just
out?
clicked out. And I did have emails from listeners that said, what happened? Was it because, so I'm glad that they noticed, but I think in that case, though, it was a setup. I was approached by that podcast host, and um, he started it off by saying, I don't believe in narcissistic abuse. And I got into an argument with the last lady who was on there. But I understand that he's not the first person to say it to me, which is why I said, just take the narcissism out of there. Abuse is abuse. When you
Absolutely.
harm another human being mentally or physically, spiritually, sexually, however, that is abuse.
Right.
That is violating somebody's right to not be harmed, basically.
Yeah.
And he went on the attack, and I was not interested because somebody, again, like the person you were with, it's the judgment. It's the, feeling like they are entitled to their opinion, which they are, but when your opinion is offensive to somebody that has endured the worst of it, that would be like somebody telling you that there's no such thing as verbal abuse or physical abuse, and somebody telling me there's no such thing as verbal abuse. Okay, well, then why am I 48 and I still have my mother and stepfather playing on a loop in my head? Some days it's just disrespectful. So I'm sorry you had that
Oh,
experience, but I commend you for it. And this is why, I love just being in your life, because you are such a strong example to men and women. And your daughter is a perfect example of how strong you are, because boy, does she's a little warrior herself, and she's going to carry on your legacy. But you know we want people to get to this point to where they can stand firm in who they are and what they've been through, and say, you don't get to treat me that way anymore. I deserve better.
right. So take a puzzle piece away and let's talk about how and what this does to people who are on the other side of the receiving end here and what they go through. So maybe some people who are listening and who haven't been through it maybe can become a little bit more understanding, and those that have unfortunately been in our shoes can see that they can heal.
Yeah. I think, well, I love this puzzle piece idea, because, like, to me, I always thought of it like chipping away at my soul, like just chipping parts of me away. But for me, I think, aside from, there were a couple big things when you use that analogy. One, it's the isolation,
Mhm.
whether they're narcissists or not. And I would argue that probably most abusers are narcissists because of their entitlement to treat somebody that way. But they isolate you. That's like narcissism 101. They
Right.
don't like that friend, so you stop, hanging around that friend. They make comments to your neighbor, so the neighbor stops coming over, and you actually liked her and could confide in her, and so you feel like you lost a friend there. And then they don't want to go to your family on the holiday. They want to go to their family because your family doesn't like him and he doesn't feel comfortable. And it's all these things that sound reasonable and sound like reasonable sacrifices to make in a normal, healthy relationship, kind of that give and take and that compromise. But it's taking away little parts of who you are.
Mhm.
And you know, when you said the puzzle, I thought all that for me, it was all the people. I just he moved me 90 miles away from everybody I knew, all my friends and family. Then, oh, you're going out with that friend again? Why do you go out? So, you know, I didn't go out that much, but you know, it was the friends, it was the family, and then all that was left was me, the one puzzle piece. So then I was desperate not to be alone, and I thought, oh, I know we said we weren't going to have kids, but I want to have a baby. And then I had my son, which, you know, I admit probably not the healthiest or greatest idea, but it is what it is. He's here. He's 21 now. But I thought, well, if I have this baby, I'm gonna love him, and he's gonna be my one person in this world that won't leave me abandoned and alone and rejected and all these things my mother did to me. And well, you know, when your kid gets old enough, they start working on your kid too. And
Yep.
then one day you wake up and you realize your kid doesn't want anything to do with you either. It's a very it's something I'm still struggling with, even though I've been out of, you know, we divorced over 4 years ago, and my son, like I said, is 21, but I'm still struggling with this, you know, sort of like it's like being banished from everybody and everything that and I think the grief associated with that is it it would it's almost worse knowing that they're alive
Yeah.
and living their lives and so willingly doing so without you. It just makes you feel like, wow, I was so invested in my aunt and my, well, if God forbid, if it is your kid or your mother or whoever, like it has been for me, close relatives that are just able to say, oh, yeah, we don't wanna, and you shouldn't have talked about all that stuff you said, you're probably lying, and you know, you are crazy. That's what they said. You're mentally
What they say.
unstable. You're probably making this stuff up. And it just, I mean, so not only are you alone, but like you just feel like worthless and you feel that abandonment and you know, you feel that loneliness then set in. And you know, we just had suicide prevention awareness month in September. And this is something that I hate that they have to be associated, but I love that we have that followed right by with domestic violence awareness because it is so, you know, isolating, and then you're left not just alone, but you're alone with all that grief and with
Mhm.
all that pain and with all that worthlessness. And this is what leads to suicide or suicidal ideation. And I've been there, and it sucks. The worst thing you could feel is that you don't want to be alive anymore because you don't want to hurt and you don't want to exist or you don't want to live this life anymore. It's awful. So
Yeah.
I get it. If anybody can relate, I'm so sorry, but all I can tell you is that you're never alone because there are so many of us out there that if we just connect and just know like it's not me, it the problem is with all these other people because there's enough of us that we can be our own little army together, and it might not be the people that should be. It might not be your mom and dad, it might not be your husband or your kid or your aunt or your grandma or whoever, but there are still people and you can still have a tribe of people to support you through this. And we are two of them here. We might be a small army, but we're quite a mighty one, I would say.
I would
But
definitely do that.
that would be the biggest piece of the puzzle for me that actually chipped away at the core of my soul. But I am with you on how you were talking about the comments because that's kind of how they break you down. It's all
Mhm.
these, you know, or they hide them in jokes, you know, but it's always something. It's about your appearance or making you feel deficient or, oh, you don't cook that like my mother does. And, you know, these things that you might not take as, you know, quite as seriously if they were once in a while, but when it's all the time, and then they get nastier, the nastier the narcissist, because I think the one that really, there were many of these comments, but the one that really did it for me, I had had actually multiple miscarriages before and after my son was born, but it was after my son was born, one of those miscarriages, I told my then husband, And he actually ridiculed me. He raised his voice and says, "Why can't you just be like everyone else and just have babies?" And I mean, to be a female, to be a woman, I mean, biblically, our whole reason to exist is to procreate. My body just didn't want to do that. And I honestly, looking back, I think it was a sign that they just didn't want me to procreate with him.
That's
But
exactly what I was thinking when you said that.
honestly, I'm grateful for my son, but what a nasty thing to say to anybody. Never mind your wife. I mean, for any woman that's ever had a miscarriage, lost a to be going through that and then have somebody say that to your husband, oh, that took away quite a few puzzle pieces of my
Yeah.
soul.
Yeah. But then you know what? You're holding that one puzzle piece to remind yourself that you're still alive. What people don't realize is that when you're holding it and you're feeling it, you're rubbing away the edges. And then guess what? That puzzle will never get back together again. And that's like the analogy I want people to get is that you're holding that one piece, which is you, and you're holding it and you're just rubbing it, or you're holding it in your hand and you get sweaty and then it starts to fray a little bit, and then it will never click back into the pieces with all the rest ever again because it doesn't fit the same. And that's what happens when you go through this, is that you're never going to fit in that puzzle the same ever again because of what it's done to us, what it's done in general. People are just like, oh, you're damaged. Oh, you're damaged goods. You're never going to be worth loving. And you're never, I mean, I would hear all the time, oh my God, I like, he would say, he turns head, I turn stomachs. And it was, yes. And it was
God.
just,
Oh my God. I'm like trying not to laugh or cry. I don't even know how to react to that. What a disgusting thing. Wow.
yeah. And you just kind of, and there was so many times I would just look at him and be like, I guess he's right. I guess he's right. And he would throw at me that I lost the love of my life and that he picked up the nasty pieces and that I'm in debt to him for that. And then there's part of me that I could tell was still trying to be the old me coming back through and fighting
Yeah.
through it and be like, have you seen yourself? Have you looked in a mirror? There is nothing there. And I even told him before we got married that I wasn't in love with him and that I wasn't attracted to him. And these guys have the most ungodly answers and they're so quick and they're believable. It's like, you have this wall up and you won't let me over it because you're hung up on someone else. And we've given so much of our life and time to everybody else. But here we are, we finally come together as one. And you're not letting me in because of what someone else has done. And I'm like, I'm an ass. Like, I'm such a shit because maybe he's right. And he was like, you gave this guy 4.5 years of your life, and this is what he did to you. I've done nothing, and you won't let me in. And then you think, oh my God, how did he do that? Like, how did he just flip it so well? And then you just kind of, and it's hilarious because I wore, my husband was like, you did, Michael was like, you did what? I wore black to my wedding. I wore all black when I married this mouse. That's what I'm gonna start calling him. And I wore black. And it was like a sign because before I went to the wedding, I was literally like on my Palm Pilot trying to find airfare back or flight back. And when I got there, it was such a sign because, like, when we lit the candle, the wax fell back on his lapel and caught him.
Oh my gosh.
It's
Oh my
like a
gosh.
sign that he was going to hell, like because he
Yeah.
put the candle too close to him. But I mean, and he didn't get, unfortunately. Sorry, I will repent. But he didn't catch on fire or anything. He just got hot wax on his whatever. But yeah, and it was just you just look and you're just like, ugh. We didn't consummate our marriage on our wedding night. He stayed up and watched ESPN sports reels or whatever it was, and I just kept thinking, can I find a drive-through divorce attorney? Like, is there any way? What the hell did I just do? And everything kept saying something amazing is going to come out of this. Something amazing is going to come out of this. And it wasn't much longer after that I got pregnant. And after, I never had consensual sex with him again, and it was all forced. And, it was awful, and every moment of it, I kept wondering, am I gonna die at his hands? Is my daughter and I gonna die at his hands? And I even had an OB say to me, why don't you think about aborting this pregnancy and get out? And I was like, I'm never going to hear that out of your mouth again because this is my baby. It's not two pugs and a push trigger. Sorry. Two pugs and a push doesn't make you a dad. And this is my baby. And I am not going to. And I've never looked at Faith and said, that's him, or that's just like him, or anything. By the grace of God, she doesn't look anything like him, thank you. But like, she just doesn't, she's not his. There never was. She never, nothing of hers is his. But you just, the comments are just horrific and they think they're hilarious. They think that they are like a stand-up comedian tearing you down. Like the comments are just you can't even fathom how you can come up with some of the comments that we've heard. It is mind-blowing to me. And it's just like one day there was a Victoria's Secret box on the bed and I was like, what is this? And I feared because I was like, oh God, please don't tell me I have to put this on. The thought of being intimate with him to me was worse than a job or a chore because I could get through a chore. I could get through that, but I did not want anything to do with intimacy. And I opened it up and he was like, oh, that's not for you. It's for my girlfriend. And he goes, but maybe one day you'll be able to fit into something like this. I'm pregnant. Now, in my entire pregnancy, I only gained like 26 pounds and I'm 5'8". And so, you know, they thought my weight was spot on perfect. I was so healthy. Everything I did during my pregnancy, like in my office, I listened to classical jazz, I listened to soft music, I had headphones on, I would sing to her every day, read to her every day. I did not eat anything that wasn't a 1000% healthy, no matter what my cravings were, because I was trying to make up for all the trauma my body was going through. But like to get something like that, maybe you'll fit into this one day. I doubt it, but maybe, and then we'd go somewhere to eat. It's like you see everybody staring. They're staring because they feel sorry for me that I'm out in public with something that looks like you.
And that's
It,
the interesting thing. And that's that I think is what I always found so interesting is how they are able to really just distort situations, but with such ease and craftiness that it affects us exactly as they intend. Because you were getting these, diminishing comments about, what he felt about you physically. On the other hand, in my situation, I was getting the opposite, that I'm beautiful and your body and this and that. And yet he would go out. And I mean, he was unfaithful before we got married. After we got married, I stopped even asking because I was like, I didn't want him touching me anyway. I don't care. But he would tell me, he would tell me and brag that, kind of to make sure that I knew he had options and that other women wanted him and that I should, but he'd also do it in these ways that diminished me. Like, for example, he once told, well, actually he said it more than a few times. He said, well, the next woman I get, I'm going to make sure she's fat and ugly because then she'll appreciate me more than you do. And I was like, my God, I mean, that's a disgusting thing anyway to say about anybody. You know, you're telling me I'm pretty, but I'm not good enough to have sex with you. Not that I want to, but then the irony was, and thank you, by the way, for saying, something about having consensual or consensual, I can't say the word, sex in a marriage, because there are people that don't believe that there isn't consent in a marital
there's spousal
situation.
rape,
I don't care
absolutely.
if you're legally tied, 100%. And it happened to me multiple times. And I'm going to tell you what, the final straw for my physical health, I literally know the night that my body switched to autoimmune. And I can get into all that. I won't get into all that, but it was November 3rd of 2018. And it was just another night. It was like another Saturday night, with the two of us, typical arguments about the same crap as always. But then he overtook my body and I laid there because I learned not to fight. I just turned my head the other way and, let him do what he had to do. But the disgust and the violation and everything that I had been suppressing and keeping in, because I had nobody to talk to, I had nowhere to go. He didn't obviously care. I mean, I will never forget that night. I mean, my body, I had all these crazy symptoms beginning literally within hours after that. It just took something for my body to switch, to flip that switch. And so it is a very real thing. And it's hard enough to be, again, I would never want to know what it's like for a complete stranger to rape me. But again, you have this person who says, I love you, and they're supposed to hold you in this high regard. They're supposed to. But I guess the piece of paper doesn't exactly stipulate that either. But you hope that they will. You keep thinking maybe something will make them realize where they're wrong and want to be better. And maybe you can do something to help them improve. And I was never one of those girls that needed to fix anybody, but I was in it. So I thought, well, I might as well try to fix it. I even was working on me, thinking if I'm different, if I'm better, then he has to react differently. That's just the yin and yang of things. So if I do this, he has to react differently, hopefully better. Well, no, I would just get worse. But they love that, at least with my ex. He loved that power and that domination over my physical body after making me feel that my body was not operating efficiently because I couldn't have babies and I wasn't fat and ugly, as he would say, but a woman that would appreciate him more. And just, if I wore that lipstick, I looked like a whore. And if I wore those jeans, I was trying to have men look at my ass so that I could go and have sex with them. And if I went to church, I was screwing the 80-year-old priest. And, but it was okay for him to pin me down
Mhm.
and make sure that he had his way with me, because he was it's so hard. There's so many aspects of this because it's not just the physical stuff. I mean, for me, and I don't want to invalidate what you've been through. I was physically abused as a child as well. Fortunately, in my marriage, I was physically threatened, but he didn't make contact. But it's all this other stuff
Yeah.
screwing with my mind and taking away these bits of my soul, violating me, that just really left this lasting effect. It makes you angry and resentful. And how are you supposed to trust people? Like you were
Right.
saying, how do you trust people? And you're presented. I mean, even now, I am remarried to somebody I've known a very long time. And if it weren't for all my, we'll call them, issues that I'm trying to improve, we would probably have the most blissful, perfect marriage ever. And we do most of the time, but I don't trust him 100%. I don't know if I ever will.
Right.
There's like literally two people in this world, in this entire universe, that I trust 100%. And I'm not even one of them. So, but that's part of this experience. They just take everything they can away from you.
Mhm.
But I love that you talk about that last piece, because so many people have asked me, as I'm sure they've asked you, well, but what was it? What made you, realize, or what made you get, I don't know what that thing is. I just tell them, but that thing, whatever it was in me, that thing that was telling me something wasn't right in the first place, and that thing telling me, I don't call it self love, because obviously you don't love yourself if you let yourself stay in a situation like that, although sometimes it's safer physically for you to. But I say it was that little tiny bit of self respect I had left, that tiny little bit of it that was just like, no, we got enough to burn and rise from these ashes. We got just enough. If you help us, get that flame going again. And I had to listen to it. And this is where I go back to, just touching back to where we started on that anxiety. I don't like when people stigmatize anxiety. It's not fun to have so much of it. I know that too well. but it's a natural thing. It's a good thing. It's that, robot from Lost in Space flinging its wiggly little arms saying, danger, danger, but it's telling you that for a reason. And we don't listen. And if we would listen and say, oh my gosh, the crunch of his tires on the gravel coming up the driveway after work every single day makes the muscles in my shoulder tense, and it makes my heart race, and it's making me sweat, and I'm scared. I mean, I can't even breathe. You could see I'm like reliving. If there's not a sign, if that's not an alarm going off in your body, that is not just anxiety. That is something inside of you saying, this isn't right. This isn't good. It's not you. You're not crazy.
Right.
This is not a good situation, and wake the hell up.
Yeah. I used to be the like heaviest sleeper, and I'd had to have alarms like, and I lived by myself, and I'd have my alarm like in my bathroom, I'd have an alarm in the kitchen because I would sleep through it and I just would sleep. Well, when I got with Mouse, it was literally like I would hear him pull up the driveway, and I learned to wake up when he would even turn, because like in the bed, because I was like, what's next? What's coming? Like I went to like the slightest anything, like he deep breathed, I woke up because it was like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And it was so dumbfounding for me because I was the person who would sleep through alarms. Like I just was like, yeah, I don't hear it. And now I would be laying in bed and he would just, and I was up because I was like, I have to, and I would pretend to be asleep. And
Yeah.
I would always grab a pillow and put it over my stomach because, like I had said so many times, I made a deal with the devil that said, if you don't go after my stomach, I won't fight you back. Because the thing with him is that if he hit me once and I reacted, he'd hit me again. If I cried, he'd hit me again. If he stabbed me and I responded, he stabbed me again. So I'd have to like become literally dead inside to get this to stop. And then he would always leave. Look what you made me do. Why did you make me do this to you?
Yeah.
And it's such a mind screw. And then I'm like, I have to get all this blood up because if I don't and he comes back, it's a refreshing remembering, like not refreshing. It's like a refresher to him and it reminds him. And then it would start over again. So you're just constantly like, you feel like you can't breathe. And I tell people, it's like, imagine being asthmatic in a closed room with no windows and one door and it's sealed shut and everyone else in that room is smoking but you, and you don't have an inhaler, because that's what it's like. That's literally what
Yeah.
it's like to be in this situation.
Yeah. Well, the title of my book, Gasping for Air. And I will say this, for me, when I was finally diagnosed, because no normal doctor could figure out what was wrong with me, it took a neurologist and a functional medicine doctor to get me with Mayo Clinic. I was diagnosed with upper airway resistance syndrome, which is a rare lung syndrome. I don't know why it's classified as a sleep disorder, but I don't think that's an accident, because guess what? It's a rare lung syndrome, but you know who commonly gets it? Hate to use the V word, victims of abuse. It is common for victims of abuse to get this. But victims of abuse go to their regular doctor and they go to their gastroenterologist because their stomach hurts. And then they go, maybe if they're lucky, they get with a neurologist. But doctors don't know about this. And do doctors even ask about abuse or trauma? No.
They don't.
Oh, you're having a situation, you're having trouble breathing. Here's an inhaler. Oh, maybe you have allergies. Here's an EpiPen if you're lucky. They and I don't mean any disrespect to doctors, but doctors did me a very great disservice. And when I finally got this diagnosis and they looked at my cortisol levels and they were like, my God, are you living in fight or flight for 24/7? Like your rates are 4 times higher. Your stress hormone is 4 times higher 24/7, round the clock, because they test you 5 times. And I was tested 3 times, and that's 5 times in a 24-hour period each time. They're like, your rates are ridiculous. Like, what is going on at home? Well, no doctor had ever asked me that. So why did I get a rare lung syndrome that is common among abuse victims? Well, one, I wasn't sleeping like
Yep.
you. The tiniest little creak, if wind blew the house just a little tiny, I mean, I heard everything. And I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't lived with that man, what, 4.5 years? I haven't slept with him and many more before that because I slept in the basement. I don't want any part of him. I am still unable to sleep through the night.
Me
It
too.
takes me multiple sleep aids to get through the night. I have been given prescription sleep medications and they don't work.
Oh, I don't
They
take
don't
anything.
even
I
put
still
me
don't
to,
sleep.
yeah. But I'm saying, like, at one point, it was about 2 or 3 years ago, I was literally, and I'm not even kidding, taking 6 pills. There were 3 different things,
Oh my
6
God.
pills, and I was
Easy.
lucky, God bless you, if
Oh, excuse
I
me.
could get 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Lucky.
And you're
I'm 6
tiny.
pills. I was 93 pounds. I am over that now. I know, but that was part of that issue. And that's something people need to be aware of because, like, I look at when I was a kid, I didn't equate this all, I didn't put it all together, but when I was a kid living in an abusive household, the stomach aches and the headaches, oh my God, I mean, I'd go to summer day camp and I would just be sitting under a tree just holding my belly with my arms crossed around my stomach because I just didn't feel good, and I always had headaches, so I didn't want to play with the other kids, so it was just like, and then being bullied and then going home and being treated. It's like, I just,
Had no out.
right. And I think this is another aspect that maybe some people can relate to, whether they have lifelong abuse or just in, childhood or in a adult relationship, but, you know, not just this ability not to trust others, but like for me, I always withdrew because I didn't feel good and I was afraid of people. I mean, people hurt mentally and
Yeah.
physically, people hurt. So I stayed away from people. And I have that tendency now. I live on 25 rural acres. I'm surrounded by cornfields. Unless the children of the corn are going to come out and play with me, I have a cat, like, and I have you, but I don't see or interact with people very often because it's not just this distrust, but when I'm put in situations, like, I want connections, I want relationships, but I almost lose the ability. I don't know if it's partially maybe I feel an ineptitude, because they chipped away at my self-esteem so harshly. I mean, I had 3 of them, 2 parents and a 25-year, boyfriend, then husband, 45 years of my life, I was made to feel deficient in one way or another, in every way, really. So I have a hard time connecting with people. And when I do, I like latch on, I'm like your typical codependent, like I'm your leech, like, don't leave me. You can't, like, I don't even like when my husband goes to work because I'm like, don't leave me alone. You're abandoning me. But I don't get that dramatic anymore. I used to. but, but these are real things. And that's the thing, is it's like, it's one thing, but it snowballs into another and morphs into another and another, because when somebody's taking away, the less able you are to handle where you're at, the less able you are to handle more of it. You can't hand me a bag of potatoes and say, here, carry another one, and then I'm carrying 20 of them. Yeah, I'm going to fall over.
Right.
It's just, that's what it feels like. But it still goes back to those puzzle pieces. I love that, to where you are alone, but you got to hold on to that, because I promise, and I always tell people this, if you want to know where you are, if you feel like you lost yourself, because we all get to that moment in these relationships, no matter what type of relationship it is. I always say, start with the basics. Start with the basic get to know yous. Like, when I first, was at that point, I was like, okay, like, I can't make a damn decision to save my life. I don't know what to do. I feel just like I'm a fish out of water. Like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm out. That's good. I'm safe, kind of. That's good. But what do I do with me? Okay, what's my favorite color? We all have a favorite color. Like, it's not a test. Okay, start with that. I'm painting my nails red. I like red lipstick once in a while. I have a hair bow on a headband that was red that I found that was cute, and I bought that. And, it sounds silly, but it was like, it would make me so happy when I'd see my nails red, and I'm like, "Ooh," and I got little heart decals because 'cause I'm obsessed with hearts, and it's just like these little things that fill your heart with a little piece of you. It's like you're
Right.
giving yourself back, and then it was like, "Oh, well, he always operated the TV. We had to watch what he wanted to watch. You couldn't put on your show, right?"
Nope.
So I was like, "Well, what do I wanna watch?" Okay, I have this strange fascination with the paranormal, so I want to watch a good, I want to watch The Conjuring, or I want to watch, an episode of whatever paranormal survivor. But you know what? It made me happy. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm indulging me. Then I was having pints of ice cream for dinner instead of, it had to be meat with two sides, but it couldn't be two carbs and two proteins, and it couldn't have two consecutive, days where you had the same meat and all this crap, all this regimented, way that he had our life. So just you have to just start with the little bits of yourself. You like a song that you hear on the radio, crank that mother up and
Yeah.
belt it out. I can't sing worth a crap, but you know what? If you catch me at the right time, it makes me feel good. Even if I sound like I'm a sucky singer, I'm not going to go on American Idol, but you know what? I can be American Idol in my car for 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I just implore people, just even if you are still in that situation, that these situations we're talking about, you're driving to get your kids, you're driving to the grocery store, give yourself those little indulgences. Just remind yourself of who you are, because once you have a little bit of that back, it just kind of it's like you said, it's that spark that the
Mhm.
flame starts burning again. And once you start to feel more like yourself, you might realize you're a lot cooler and much braver and resilient, and just that you deserve better than that, and people will respond to you differently as well. It's an amazing thing that happens when you start to find yourself again.
That's so true, and, I have to oh, here's something. I have to just say for a second, I had a regular pediatrician, and then he retired, and then there was a fill-in, and then I had this lady come in, and she had a presence about her, and it was so funny because I used to get ear infections all the time when I was little, and I went in for a checkup and she come in and immediately, like, she was like, "I'm gonna examine you. It's part of what we do every year, da 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 da." And she goes, "You know what? I'm gonna ask is this your mom?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I'm gonna ask her to step out." She's like, "I'm not stepping out, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "Well, I'm gonna tell you to step out." And so she did. And now, I was a minor and I'm sure back then things were different. But I remember her saying to me, she was like, "Are you okay?" And I went, "Huh?" And she's like, "'Cause it just seems like, you know, you've told us that your stomach hurts, and your mother, if I hate that term, would say, 'Oh, she's just doing it to get out of something,'
Yep.
or
Yep.
she doesn't wanna do her chores, or she doesn't wanna help me, or, whatever." And I was like, "No, it really hurts. Like, it hurts." And she goes, "I believe you." And it was that person that I was like, thank you, to make me feel validated. And, and like you said, some doctors don't ask questions. And she didn't ask specifically, but then she was like, "Do you have headaches?" And I said, "I do." And then she goes, "Well, it might not just be from the pressure in your ears. It might just be other things too."
Yeah.
And then, she was non-conventional in the fact that, like, I told her I wanted to get my ears pierced. And then when I was 16, again, much different decades ago, she pierced my ears for me in the doctor's office without her,
Yeah, they did
without,
do that. Yeah.
and she did it. And then my bio mom went ballistic because she didn't ask her permission. She was like, "I did it. So what?" That was her mentality. And then she was like, "I could report you." And she looked it right at her face, and I'll never forget it. And she goes, "And I can report you." And just when
Wow.
she said that, I was like, I just, like, was just dumbfounded because she was like, "Yeah, I pierced her ears." Because she went in there, my mother went in there, and she was like, "Did you just pierce her ears? Blah, 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 blah." And she goes, "I did." And she's like, "You didn't have my permission. I told her she couldn't get her ears
Mm.
pierced till she was 18, blah, blah, blah." And she was like, "I did it." And she just looks at her with this look, and then she's like, "I can report you." And she looked back at her and she goes, "I can report you as well." And it was the end of it. It was just like the end. And then on my 17th birthday, she gave me my second ear piercing. And it was just, and it took, and just the perfect analogy of how long it took my biological mother to see that I had a second ear piercing. It took her over 6 weeks. I was out of my starter earring set. before she realized I had a second ear piercing. That is how unseen I was. Like, how do you not see in your own house, because it's not a home, that you have a second hole in your ear on both sides? Like, she didn't even notice it until after I had changed out the starter earrings. That's how invisible I was as the black sheep, and I just love this doctor who was just like, go ahead, and I'll make a phone call too, and she just did something to make me feel better about myself, and it was so simple, but yet, she knew that there was parameters she couldn't cross. But when I would go see her for physicals and stuff, she'd let me have like that 5 minutes where,
Mhm.
you know, come talk to me, or I need a urine sample. We're going to check your ketones or whatever. And then she'd be like, I need to check on her. She's taking a minute. And she would just take me in the back in the office, and she'd be like, are you okay? How's it going? What's going on? I'm limited.
That's very unusual. So I'm
Right.
glad you had that because I know people see it, but they don't say anything.
Right.
We still have that. But I want to comment real quick. It's very interesting to me because I also was the black sheep, the scapegoat child. But I was talking to you about this before we came on. I'm writing my third book, and had an epiphany yesterday. And I mean, it's something that was so obvious to me, but it's such a different experience from what you just shared, which was that, I would get the silent treatment. They wouldn't even look at me,
I
all
got
that
that.
stuff. But
Mhm.
I was scrutinized, even as an adult, but as a kid too, scrutinized. I mean, there was nobody probably knew me better than my stepfather, who was really the primary abuser in my childhood, and actually probably well, he came second to my ex-husband. But it's interesting because I mean, everything about my appearance, if I even if it was a bat of my lashes or some way I fumbled with he could just read my insecurities. It's like he could see through me. He saw me, but he used all that against me. Or I would like the part I was writing about yesterday in the sequel. It was when I was an adult. It was the last time I was ever in their house. But, the way he scrutinized me, I realized that like he is seeing me better than this man that I'm going to marry, better than my own son, better than my grandma, my mother. This man knew me inside and out. And what a disgusting thing to then take that and be the one person in my life who probably, well, I don't know if he abused me the most because my ex is a close, that's a tough one. It's almost a tie, just different ways. But it's interesting because that's a narcissist. That is what narcissists do. They know you, they use everything they know about you against you,
Yep.
and but primarily these are your insecurities about yourself. Even if they're not your insecurities yet, they will make you insecure about stuff that
They
you
will.
wouldn't have been otherwise. So then you end up you get out of these situations feeling worthless, deficient, alone, not enough. Like you say, the broken, the damaged, and we've all used those words to refer to
Mhm.
ourselves. I refuse anymore though, because like you, I looking back, at least where I've come to in my little healing journey, is that I'm no more broken or damaged than anyone else, because that man who did all these things to me might be sitting high on the hog over there and have all his stuff and have all the family on his side that he turned against me and have everything and everyone. He probably needs more therapy than I do. To
Exactly. But they'll
have the
never admit it.
capacity.
They'll never admit it.
No, but it's a damning thing to call ourselves broken and damaged when, you know, we didn't do this to ourselves. I mean, we're using these analogies of puzzle pieces. I look at it like a vase. If the vase falls over, even if somebody takes it and throws the vase down, I mean, it could shatter. It could shatter pretty bad. But you start with the big pieces and you collect them all if you're really diligent. And that's the thing. It's hard freaking work. And I'm
It's
still in it and it sucks. It's
Yes, it
almost
does.
easier to go back. I actually said this to somebody. I said it would be easier for me to go back to my ex-husband or my childhood and navigate stuff that I know and stuff that I've mastered than it is to excavate the damage and the core issues and try to overcome them. It sucks and it's
It does.
painful and it's discouraging and it's all these things. But with hard work and diligence, you can put every tiny bit of that vase right back together. Are you going to have some scars? Yeah, but you're still going to be a vase that holds water and can hold flowers or whatever else you want to put in it. And you can still be a vase. You are still a whole person. There's nothing damaged or broken unless you decide that you want to be damaged or broken. And I hate to say it, and I'm sure you can agree, there are people out there that actually live in their victimhood very comfortably. And you
Yes.
know what? You almost can't blame them. Nobody would blame either one of us if we collected disability and laid in bed all day and cried and were depressed and, whatever, or, became alcoholics, whatever.
Right.
Nobody would say that we didn't have that right. But we chose to rise above. We chose to do the hard work because we don't want to be victims to what somebody else decided for us. And that is the key here is that you have to decide, are you going to buy into what somebody else decided you are? Or do you want to be who you really are?
Right.
You have to find that person again because we get lost.
We do get lost. And I want to
I,
say this before we close off, and we're going to have to do a part two to this. But when I look at her, and she doesn't know I'm going to do this. So when I look at Dana, she's become very close with Faith. And I love that Faith, who doesn't have a lot of family, actually calls her Aunt Dana. Like she loves it. She's like, I haven't talked to Aunt Dana today. And I need to text her. Like she got her nails done. She's like, I can't wait to show Aunt Dana. And
and they've read my favorite.
I'm like, you look like Harley Quinn. Like it looks like Harley Quinn. And she's like, yeah, she's hot. And I'm like, oh. So, but when I look at Dana or if somebody asked me about Dana and I talk about her a lot, I would say to her, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and she's going to get all over my butt about this. I see her as like, if you go somewhere and you see one of the most breathtaking, gorgeous stained glass pieces, this to me is Dana. And let me tell you why. Because in order to get this beautiful stained glass piece of art, you have to have a whole lot of pieces and they're not broken. They are found. Each piece is found and it's put together to make this beautiful lifelong piece of art that allows light to come in and brings happiness and joy and just that is what you are to me. And I know you're that way to Faith, but like it just having you in my life, like I've told her before in the beginning when we started to get close, I was like, you can't ever leave because I couldn't imagine not having her in my life anymore. Uh, because she is just this beautiful ray of life. And it is literally like if you go find this beautiful stained glass uh, piece of art somewhere or in a church and you see this beautiful window and it brings in the light and it makes you feel warm and it makes you feel welcome and it makes you feel safe and secure. That's Dana. That's how I would just summarize Dana in like one little swoop is because that's exactly who she is. She brings in the light, she brings in the love, but you have to get in there to her in order for you to see it. And it takes a lot before that door gets open before you gain entry. And I am very protective of anyone that I care about and love, and you are that person.
Well, I love you and your daughter as well. And honestly, when she sent me that message and asked if she could call me Aunt Dana, that touched me more than you can ever imagine. You can see my tears. I'm a little emotional right now, but because I don't have my own family mostly rejects me. I literally can count maybe a half dozen at literally 5 or 6 actual biological family members that even are in my life anymore, and this is multiple sides. So I think it's important for people to understand that, though. And thank you for that beautiful, just everything you said.
Honest.
I adore you guys, but that speaks exactly. It's hard for me to hear because I am still in that process of healing where I'm trying to feel that way about myself because I have had multiple people make me feel like the ugliest piece of crap that could ever exist. And that is exactly what abuse does to a person, and that's exactly what I refuse to let anybody else feel because it's not fun and it's not the way to live. And you know I'm gonna I could gush about you, but I just think you are such an example to women of
Oh,
being fearless and taking your power back and being brave. And if anybody has not been on Facebook today, I am going to call attention to a very triggering post that you made because it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But I would urge everybody to go on Facebook and check this out, because I think that we really need to use these opportunities to know what abuse looks like. We've talked more about like inner turmoil and some physical stuff today, but you know, we all, I think, kind of overlook the actual physical abuse, which is usually the epitome of what abuse is to people, is the woman with the black eye and whatever. But what you have endured is something no person should. And I don't know how you are here and how you are smiling and how you are just shameless and open and vulnerable. So I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for,
Aw.
you know, shining the light on what abuse is, and on the fact that we are not victims, that we are survivors, because you are like, literally, to me, you are like the utmost, like I hold you in this highlight because you show me every day how to be brave and how to, you have no idea how many times I think, well, Victoria wouldn't stand for this. Victoria, but it's true. And I love that your name is Victoria, because that's just, I like to look for signs and coincidences. But, we could keep going on this love fest, but just for everybody that's listening, just know that we are here for you. We've been there. I am there. You are there in certain way. Like, we have experienced the full gamut between the two of us,
Yes.
and we're still. So don't hesitate to, reach out, comment on our posts, listen to these different podcast episodes, because we're sharing a lot, because we want you to really relate and understand and know that this is a very real thing happening to you. But the most important, we say it every time, you're not alone. You are not
Right.
alone.
No, I also want to take 1 second and thank everybody because I have my own author page on Facebook. It's Victoria Curie author page. And I know Dana has gone on there. You're going to have to go on there again because people are commenting on our shows and they're putting that on there. And what I love is that I've had people individually comment to me on private message and say, I've listened to all of the nuggets and I wanted to thank you, but out of such fear, I started a new Facebook page. So please don't, look at mine as if whatever, but I may only have 5 or 6 friends or whatever on there because I just started a new page so that I can start me again. And so people are coming on there and they're reacting and they're responding. And, I have to tell you, it takes a lot to go on and publicly say something about it. And for those people who have come out and made comments, I mean, there are dozens and dozens of comments out there that are being made because it's so hard as someone going through this to publicly put themselves out there where their quote unquote abuser could see. And that's just a trigger all on its own. And for these, I've had 2 different people come on and kind of say the same thing is that they're reinventing themselves. And
Mhm.
so that's why they wanted to say that and they put themselves out there and they're commenting about how much this helps them. And so, you know what? That's why we do what we do and we will keep doing what we do. And I just want to say, and I'm sure Dana will say the same, we are so proud of you to take that initiative because you're getting your voice and you're using it. And that is so important.
100%. And just even listening to us use our voices, you're halfway there, because it's scary. And we know, we get it, but
Absolutely.
we're with you. So don't ever feel like you're alone.
Yeah, and if you go on, I'm gonna make some other mugs and things like that, but I'll put the link to the show in there, and I'll also put the link to the store in there, and you can get like T-shirts, and there's a whole bunch of workbooks and anxiety books and
Yeah.
journals and things like that. But I did a mug for this show, and I sent one over to Dana, and I sent one over to myself to have, and any of those products that come from our series, 100%. There's no profit. I mean, there's like a dollar over cost on it for what I do. And all of that, whatever's left extra, I am donating to a domestic violence survivor house for the month to help as well. So
Mm.
I want to make sure that we can do everything we can.
Perfect. And yes, I appreciate you saying that because that's such an important thing because I think that's the biggest thing that I get from people is I don't know that I can leave because I don't know where to go. I have nowhere to be. I don't know where I'm going to take my kids, and these shelters do need our support. They need our financial backing.
Absolutely. And I will say, my husband's walking up the stairs, that he was stunned yesterday because one of the things that I know I still need to work on 100% is I hide behind my clothes. I absolutely do. Here's my husband. We're talking about, I'm on here with Dana and we're talking about how, like, I hide behind my clothes. And I know that's something that my husband doesn't like is me hiding behind clothes. And I don't mean like I'm wearing a size big. I would say it's like 3, 4, whatever times the size I'm supposed to be
Oh my
wearing.
goodness.
I know, because I hide behind them. And so yesterday, I just decided, to hell with it. I'm going to do something when my husband was at work. And what is the total now that it is? We're still recording, so be nice. how many how many did we have total? How many bags did I get rid of? 7 full huge
Oh my
bags
gosh.
of clothes I hide behind. Yeah, because I mean, I'm like, I'm trying, I'm gonna try. Um, but I did, and we're gonna donate them to the shelter as well. But uh,
Yay.
yeah, so that was a really big deal. But we're gonna do a part two to this one because it definitely needs to be done. But again, feel free to comment, like, share, anything and everything. We are here to support. You can reach out to either one of us, and we are very, very much into your confidentiality. So feel safe in doing that as well. Again, she is my beautiful stained glass art piece, and I thank her as always.
Love you too, babe. I'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.